Have you ever thought, I'll never save enough money for a down payment? If so, you're not alone. For a lot of first time home buyers, it's not about finding the right house, it's more about saving for the down payment. But what if I told you with the right plan, you could be moving towards home ownership a lot sooner than you think? And that's what we're going to dive into today. And that is a simple plan, 3 steps, CPA. And no, you're not going to need to get an advanced degree. And no, you don't need to hire an accountant. That's going to be clarity, planning, and action. And so let's dive right into the first one. That's clarity. A lot of first-time homebuyers think that they need 20% down to buy a home. And the truth is, that's not necessarily the case. Now, there are some advantages to putting 20% down. For instance, you might have some additional savings. However, it doesn't mean that if you don't have the 20%, you can't move forward. There are a lot of options. And so in the first step, it's really about how much do you need? Finding out what's the real number for you. And so with talking with a lender, you might find out that you qualify for a conventional loan that doesn't need 20% down, but maybe they'll take 10%. Maybe they'll take 5% down. And in this market we're in right now, I've seen as low as 3% down for a conventional loan. Now, there's also the Federal Housing Administration, which offers an FHA loan, and that down payment's 3.5%. So not 20%, but as low as potentially 3.5%. There's even some options that have some requirements with them for 0% down. The one most widely known is the Veterans Administration, the VA loan for those that meet military requirements. You might need your DD-214, might need proof of service, but you can get a certificate of eligibility and have 0% down. One less commonly known is a USDA loan, that it could be 0% down. Now, that one comes with some restrictions around location. It also comes with income restrictions and also some debt to income restrictions. So it might not be as available to you where you're at, but it's worth asking a lender about if you need that 0% down. Let's take a look at some examples of using those different percentages and see how much difference it can make. Now I'm going to use a $100,000 loan in order to come up with our percentages. And so you may not be able to find a $100,000 house in your area. That's okay. This is just for example, right? And so 20% down on a $100,000 loan, that's $20,000. If you compare that to 3.5% loan, now we're only talking about $3,500. 10% conventional, that would be $10,000. And you could just double that for a $200,000, or you can triple that for a $300,000 house. But you can see it's quite a wide difference. The next thing to look at in our clarity step is how much money do you already have saved? Do you have a separate savings account or a separate account maybe you even forgot about? Maybe, like me, some of your relatives gave you savings bonds that have matured and you've never cashed them in. They're just sitting in your file cabinet somewhere. Can you cash those in and have that cash available? Maybe you have money from a wedding gift, a recent wedding that you had, and that's money that could be used. So kind of gathering that information and all the different money that might be available. Now stick around for the final step in action, because that's where I'm going to reveal the number one thing that not only could help you in your saving for a down payment, but it has been the biggest thing that's impacted my overall wealth journey. And I'm going to share that in the action step. But first of all, moving on to the next phase, which is planning. So in the planning phase, we already kind of know what we need, right? How much we need to save, and let's just call that $10,000 if we're doing a 10% conventional. We already know that we have $4,000 saved. Well, now we have a gap. That gap is our $6,000, and that's what we need to save in as quick amount of time as we think is possible. And the next thing I'll have you do is ask yourself 4 questions. The first question is going to be, what's coming up, right? Maybe I didn't have wedding funds in the beginning, but maybe I've got a wedding coming up. Maybe I've got a tax refund that I tend to see every year, and tax season's coming up. You could use that money, designate that, and set it aside. The next 3 questions I'll start with is, 1, what's something you already do that if you did more of it, you could actually earn and save more money towards your down payment? An example of this might be just overtime. You're working your normal job right now, and if there's an availability for overtime and you're willing to commit to that, you can earn a significant amount towards your down payment. The second question I'll have you ask yourself is, what's something that I'm not doing that if I started doing it, I could earn a good amount of money? You know, a common thing here to think of is a side hustle. Is there a side hustle, either one that I've done in the past that I could start back up, or that I'm willing to start doing? And it doesn't have to be for a long time. It's just for the short time to save your down payment. Is there something you could do along that? And the final question is, what am I spending money on right now that if I stopped, I could really save a lot of money? And kind of think here about just consumption in general. In our society today, there's a lot of things that we think are just absolute needs that if we have a more important goal, they're really not that big of a deal, right? And so this could be anything from maybe eating out 6 times a week, you decide to eat out 3 times a week, and then take that money that you save and put it towards your down payment, saving towards your down payment. Let us know some of the answers to those 4 questions that you came up with in the comments so that you can share them with everyone who's on a similar journey as you. All right, now the final step, and that's the action step. In the action step, we're going to look at, first of all, scheduling an appointment with a lender. And I've been in real estate over 15 years. We work with some great lenders. I'm happy to refer one to you. However, if you don't already have one. And in that appointment with the lender, ask them, 1, based on your current situation, what type of loan would be best for you, but 2, what other options would be available. The other thing you want to look at in that next step, and this was that number 1 thing, and that's automate. So if you looked at your budget and you've decided it's easy for you to save a certain amount, maybe you can save up to $500 a month or $300 a month, whatever your number is, go ahead and automate that. And so what I mean by automate that is set up in your accounts to go from the checking account or your spending account, wherever your normal paycheck goes into, and then automatically designate shortly after payday that amount will go into your savings. However, you're going to have to make an agreement with yourself and with a partner, if that's applicable, that you're not going to touch that money for anything else except the down payment on the house. And if you can't start at the 300 or the 500, that's okay. Start with something simple, even as small as $10. It's not so much here about the amount in the beginning as it is developing the habit. You know, if there's another thing, it isn't really automation, but it could be another source of money that we talked about earlier in the steps, is what if you have a bonus coming up? Do you always get a bonus in December? Could you designate that money to go towards your down payment? And could you just automatically send it to your savings? All right, the last thing in the action step is simply to implement, go ahead and put into action everything that we talked about up above, right? All the answers to your previous questions, put those into a plan and execute, implement those things. All right, so now that you know and you have a plan around saving up for a down payment, then in the next video, we're going to talk about the real costs. Now, there are some additional costs you have to consider besides down payment, and we'll cover that in our next video.